Hi, I'm Michael.
I'm Ebong.
And I'm Kate.
Today we're dishing with you from Equinox Restaurant, located at 818 Connecticut Avenue Northwest, right here in D.C.
And today we have a very, very special guest. I'm very excited to introduce her because I've read one of her books, and I think it's fantastic.
Well, thank you.
I think, well...
Are you a paid endorser?
I am not a paid endorser, but I really enjoyed it.
It's a great book, I'm
in fact, I read it, I think it took me maybe like an hour and a half to read it. I just read it all the way through.
That's a speed record.
Yeah, well, sorry. But Kerry Reichs is joining us. Kerry, you are a local author, and I love you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having
and
me.
Sharing your talent with us. Why did you decide to be a writer?
Oh, people who are aspiring writers really don't like this story. I was a practicing attorney in Washington, D.C. Many of you know my mother is a writer, Kerry Reichs, and I literally woke up one day and thought, I think I'm going to write a novel today. So I quit my job, I moved to California, I lived on the beach, I sat down and I wrote a book, and then I sold it.
Wow, no.
It's pretty
authors
atypical.
Yeah, it's very atypical. That
I
never
can't tell
happens.
you that, you know, if you work really hard and you take lots of classes and you get a master's that you're guaranteed to publish a book.
You weren't a starving writer, you know, drinking cups of coffee made out, you know.
This is the first page I ever wrote.
Socks as filters.
Is right here.
Okay, so,
wow.
okay,
Yeah.
was it so easy for you because your mother is a writer, and so you kind of knew what you needed to do to get that book published?
In a way, because I had the confidence that you can break into what's an incredibly challenging industry. I mean, many aspire and few succeed, and with the economy being what it is now, they're actually slowing the stream of writers being released into the public to fewer books and fewer writers, which is good for those of us working, but harder for those aspiring. To see my mother having made a success of it as a second career gave me the confidence to do it. But I also think there's the question of deliberate practice and the idea, can you just do something if you focus hard enough? Mm-hmm. And then there's a question of innate magic. Are you connected to something? And I was very intimidated by starting. I'm actually at that place right now, teetering on the precipice of the first sentence of a new book. And it is the most daunting place you can be. And when I got out to California, I spent a lot of time researching baby name websites. I had to have every character perfectly named before I could sit down and start writing text. And then one day I thought, oh my God, I've been here a month and all I've got is a list of baby names. I'm well armed to become Octomom, but I'm not making a book. So I sat down and I started typing, and it was magic. I knew I was never going to do anything else again. So I was technically on sabbatical. I quit my job, and my 4-month trip to California extended to a year and a half.
So you knew you wanted to write a book, but you didn't know what plot you wanted to follow or anything. You just knew, I want to write a book.
Right.
And you quit your job?
Yeah, right. The quitting the job part, I think my parents, while supportive, suspended a respectful silence for my decision on that one. Mm-hmm. I always thought that to write a book you really had to hit some nadir in your life, like some dreadful thing had to have happened, the loss of a parent, the loss of a child, and you know, and being dumped a few times and you know, not liking my job didn't to me seem like something that was going to get me on the bookshelves or on Oprah.
Right?
Exactly. And then one day I realized that I did have a story to tell, and you know, I'm not going to be the next James Joyce, but I can write something that people relate to, find amusing, connect with. My first book, well, all my books tend to be about women who are slightly out of step with traditional expectations. And the first book
Isn't
is
that
called...
all of us?
Yeah, I was going to say,
Wait.
the majority of people are going through that right now. A lot of my
Maybe that's why they're so
same
popular,
thing.
actually.
That's why everyone's trying to write a book. So it makes you wonder who sets the expectations. If none
And
of us
there
are
you go. Who
going
is
along
setting
with
the
it.
Well, that sounds like me.
When's going to get the guys to read the book?
Oh, guys love this book. I had a call from an ex-boyfriend the other day, and he said, I read your book and I finally understand women. He said, there are these girls, and I understand how they think now. Thank you.
That's a pretty
picking up a copy
enticing
right after
reason to
this.
read the book. I didn't think about that. But this one, The Best Day of Someone Else's Life. Now, this is about someone who is a bridesmaid
Over and
over again. And this is something that we've seen in a movie recently, too. So this seems to be kind of a big theme that is popular.
Yes.
It's popular in, I'll say, I call it chick lit in a very nice way. I appreciate it. I love it. But so where did this come from? Are you a bridesmaid over and over
Oh
again?
my God, yeah. I'll give you a little dish, actually, that's not a very well-known fact. The Best Day of Someone Else's Life has recently been optioned for a film. And one of the reasons it took so long to option it was because 27 Dresses had come out exactly when my book was released last year.
Yeah, I just watched it then.
And
Blessing and a curse.
fairly well-known actress who I can't dish on just yet bought the option, sat on it for a while because she didn't want to start trying to fund the project with that movie in the theaters. They wanted to see how it did. And it tested fine. so now they're moving forward trying to get something made out of this, which is pretty exciting. For me, it was really just, I had been a bridesmaid so many times, and I think that I started thinking a lot about the Mary tale that we're fed as young girls. That
Mary tale.
The Mary
I
tale,
like
the
that.
happily ever after and the big white dress and the rice and all of that. And
No rice, it hurts the birds.
well, that's great. Bubbles now, so bubbles. But right, that's a perfect analogy, Kate, because the rice hurts the birds, and yet we have this vision of weddings with rice, and it's the same idea. Well, it's not good for everybody, this marriage thing. And I'm not saying you get married or you don't get married. I think it's just slow down and think for yourself what you want. Don't just assume that we're hurtling toward this outcome and hit 29 and you clothesline that next guy that comes along and drag him to the altar.
That's exactly what happens.
Well, that's what I was trying to do.
He's like, my neck is still sore. I'm blocking all the clotheslines.
No.
So I wrote about a woman who just sort of falls out of step with that and starts to question why everyone is racing to marriage and if it's something really for her. And then, not to do any spoilers, but she then does meet someone who is very traditional and marriage-minded, and then it becomes an issue of people in compromise, and at what point can you become too compromised that it's no longer healthy for you, and how to hang on to yourself while working and being with others in relationships.
Have you ever thought about writing a book with DC as the backdrop location?
I love it. You know, Best Day of Someone Else's Life walks most of the streets of DC. It's split between North Carolina and Washington. I love doing little compliments to places that I favor myself. My second book, The Good Luck Girl, actually takes place in a bookstore, and that's another fun thing. I have a lot of friends who are writers now that I'm in the business, and I love to make sly little references to them. And I work in people's names. Another reason that the men should read is to make sure that they're not mentioned. So you want to know if it's out there.
I want to know if I'm in this book.
There are
or
many
not.
men
No,
from my
I
past that are
just-
shaking in their shoes right now.
I haven't actually read this one, so you have to tell us a little about this one.
Okay. This is The Good Luck Girl. It'll actually be released in the United States called Leaving Unknown. I mean, it's a publisher's conundrum that they don't seem to agree on much, and I have two different publishers. It's out in the UK, and it's the story of the little sister Maeve from The Best Day of Someone Else's Life. She drives across the country to California to change her life. I don't know where I got my ideas. And and she does this great American road trip, and as you journey with her, you realize that she's actually running from a dark past, and it kind of explores survivorship issues and how you, when you think your life is sort of stopped and the world has stopped turning, put yourself back together and figure out not who you would have been but for this thing, but who you are, embracing and moving on from your past into the present. It's a little more serious book.
So
but
this
kind of
is
funny
only
too.
this is only part of how you started initially writing. But is there any other influences, non-fictional influences that came into your second book?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a very big volunteer for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and I have for many years been fundraising. I suffered a loss of someone close to me, and so I do these 100-mile one-day bike rides with Team and Cheney to raise money, and I started thinking about survivor issues, because when we think about cancer and so many of these illnesses that we struggle to raise money and funds to combat, we don't often think about survivors. We think, oh, they're the lucky ones. And I think it is a unique challenge to put your pieces back together and go on and not be like other people. Say you're an adolescent, you become ill just at the time when most of us are starting to make adult decisions, and your adolescents become arrested. How do you kickstart it? If you think you're not going to live, how do you kickstart a life and believe and embrace it? And how do you relate to your body once it's betrayed you and forge a truce with when your own cells were your worst enemy at one point. So, a very practical exposure to many of the wonderful and remarkable survivors and people I met fundraising for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And many of the other, we all see our colleagues for Alzheimer's and MS, and the incredible work that people do to fundraise in DC in particular, something that I like the best about this town. And that's been helpful to me in writing.
So you started book number 3, and I know you're just on that first page, but can you give us an idea of what we have to look forward to?
I'm doing something a little different with book 3. I'm doing a multiple point of view. So it's going to be something like this. There's going to be 4 or 5 individuals that all have a common interest, and you're going to hear from their point of view, male, female, old, young. And the center that brings them all together is a fertility clinic. And so we're looking
I
at...
can only imagine. Guys should definitely read that book, for sure.
Well, it is something that we can only imagine about, and we will be looking for that. And if you haven't read Kerry's other books, Kerry Reichs' books are very, very good. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you guys for
Thanks
having
for
me. I really
being
enjoyed
here.
it.
And as always, thank you for being with us. And don't forget to come back here next time on The District Dish.